On today's show, it's a mailbag from you, the listeners, who were nice enough to give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Let's get into it. Thanks for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. That includes YouTube. Please subscribe on our YouTube channel if you have not already.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. The music you heard on the way in, by the way, is from our friends at Astro Radio. Check them out on Apple Music or Spotify. Congratulate Dylan Stewart, just the lead singer at the end of the Cleveland Magazine, a student to have a child. Congratulations to Dylan. I'm Chris Manning, covering the Cavs and the NBA for places like Diamond Up Rocks and Spaces for the Sword. My co-host is Evan Damrell, covering the Cavs and the Cleveland sports scene at large for Facebook's Right Down Euclid. Producer Jake Stevens is not with us behind the virtual glass, but he is producing. Evan, we have a fun mailbag today to kick off this week of episodes. Let's dive into it. First question is from Big Mike Villa 23 on Twitter, who asked, if Sexton ends up taking the qualifying offer and then Cleveland then attempts to trade him during the season, what is your ideal package back for him? So, Evan, I think I'm going to let you answer this first, but I think the only thing I will say is that we have to reframe this question because, as a reminder, the qualifying offer means he has a no-trade clause for next season, so he could dictate where he goes in a trade, and I think for the Cavs, that creates some logistical challenges in terms of getting what you'd want in that kind of possible scenario.
Yeah, it does, and shouts to Big Mike. He reviewed the wrong podcast first, then reviewed ours, so he's spreading the love to a lot of people in the Cavs podcasting sphere. As a late, but no free advertising. I'm not going to share who it is. But either way, this is a difficult question because I don't have Colin Sexton on speed dial. He's not sitting behind me. He's not sitting in your office with you, Chris. We can't ask him directly, like, hey, if you picked up the qualifying offer and didn't want to play in Cleveland, where would you end up? So if you look at the grand, canvas of the league, it's tricky for the Cavs because Colin may give him, a short list of teams, and then those teams will say, okay, Colin Sexton wants to play for us. We don't have to break the bank or bend over backwards to trade for him, or we don't need to be sending out a bunch of assets in order to trade for him, because I don't know if folks remember, but when Carmelo demanded a trade to the Knicks, that was a little bit of a different circumstance, granted, because Carmelo was Carmelo at the time, but the Knicks depleted a lot of their depth and their roster to get Carmelo, and I don't think we're going to see teams doing the same thing for Colin Sexton at this juncture. I know that might be a hot take to some, but it's an interesting thought exercise, but we don't know where Sexton wants to end up. So, Chris, you can give me your thoughts on it, but we can maybe spitball. I have a few teams in mind that make sense, but we can kind of bounce that off back and forth with each other.
Yeah, I think the trickiest part about this, Evan, for me is I think you're trying to decide whether you want more win-now pieces or you want future assets in return for Sexton. So I think I would lead more towards the former in that sense, and okay, what team can we talk to who's going to maybe give us picks, young players, something like that in exchange for Sexton, because we're not in a fully win-now situation here, right? And the other thing about the qualifying offer is that you'd have to combine his salary because it's only a 7 million it is. You have to then combine him with other salaries. So let's just say it's one of whatever, if it's, let's say it's Jetty Osmond's on the roster, Dylan Windler isn't for whatever reason. That's 14. Or if it's Lowry Markkanen or Caris LeVert, you have to start combining him with other guys to make a trade for something more established, which makes this sort of tricky. So, I'm wondering, do you prioritize picks? Mm-hmm. Do you prioritize a team that's, views him as, part of their rebuilding process? Is it Utah? Is it Oklahoma City? Is it...
Those are teams I had pulled up, actually.
Yeah. Is it, does Miami come calling for whatever reason? There's just... I'm just, I think you got to throw out teams that are, maybe a little more on the rebuilding side, or teams that really view Colin as someone that could help them win and fits their needs a little differently than the Cavs could decide that they do. And of course, this is all hypothetical. He could sign a contract. He could take a multi-year deal. We could still be talking about trades for him in that situation. But the qualifying offer is just like, it is particularly challenging for me, Evan, to like figure out functional trades for Colin Sexton on the qualifying.
Yeah, it is. It's very tricky. I know right now, like the Miami Heat use them as an example. They haven't extended Tyler Herro yet, and maybe there's some way you could kind of wiggle through that a little bit if Cleveland or Miami sends back like Tyler Herro, and I doubt they send back Nikola Jovic, or maybe they send back like Gabe Vincent or Orlando Robinson or something, just to kind of make the salary work if you want to do the Heat avenue. Or if it's the Jazz, we could do Malik Beasley if you package Sexton's salary with Jetty Osman's salary, and then you have like that coming back for you if you're Cleveland. Like, that's not terrible. If you look at the Pistons, there's some interesting-ish options, because like, let's be frank, Jaden Ivey's off the table. Cade Cunningham's obviously off the table. There's a lot of players. Just any player that's young is off the table. But like, maybe you could get Alec Burks if you're able to. If you keep Dylan Windler around, you package Colin Sexton and Dylan Windler together and send that to Detroit for Alec Burks. Or you get Nerlens Noel in a pick for Colin Sexton. Or you get something of value from Detroit. Or maybe you get a little bit of column A, column B there, where it's not going to be like a huge game-changing contributor, but it's going to provide you some quality depth around the edges, of course. And then like the Thunder, they're tricky. Like Derek Favors sticks out a little bit if you're able to like cobble together salary and make that work. Because I'm looking at a lot of players on their payroll. Like, it's just a lot of these young pieces. Like, it's Poku, it's Jalen Williams, it's Ousmane Dieng, it's Josh Giddey, it's Chet Holmgren, it's Lou Dort, it's Shea SGA. Like, these aren't guys the Thunder aren't going to be prone to be trading. And then you look at guys like Kendrick Williams, who whose extension is set to kick in for the 23-24 season. Or you have like Jeremiah Robinson Earl, if you use him as like salary filler or something, and like you bring back like him and like Darius Baisley or like Mike Muscala, or like cobble just like a bunch of pieces. Like with the Thunder, I feel like you're looking at a lot of those picks they have at that point, and then you try to negotiate in good faith and maybe bring back some type of contributing player. Like, there's some interesting options, but they are fairly underwhelming if you just look at like some bad teams who might have ammunition to go get Colin, or like a team like Miami who isn't going to give you much of anything, and you kind of have to work with Sexton's camp at this point if he doesn't want to be in Cleveland anymore, because like we said at the top, he's going to dictate where he wants to end up, and then the Cavs will probably get a short list and try and figure out a team to maybe work with if it gets to that point.
This is why I wonder if like they might like look for picks or future-looking
Thunder
things.
Makes sense for picks. The Pistons have a boatload of picks from the Knicks now. Like, they make sense too. The Heat, not so much. The Jazz, possibly with the Rudy Gobert trade, but like at the same time, if you're the Jazz, you're in the midst of rebuilding. You're probably trying to replenish your cachet of assets, so maybe not so much. I don't know. I'm sure there's going to be a mystery team that comes out of nowhere that says they're interested in Sexton, but like teams that have been linked to him, teams like with prior history with him, like the Knicks are probably off the table just because they're going to keep all their assets in a row for Donovan Mitchell. So it's an interesting thought exercise, but like I said, we also don't know where Colin will want to go if in the event he wants to be traded.
Yeah, we have no idea of like what that would look like. So this is just like jumping through hoops, almost. And it's like Dallas again, like is a team that he's been linked to a little bit here. It's like their pick situation, it's getting better as time goes on, but it's like I look at like the salaries you could throw there, like back Cleveland's way. It's like those are guys they kind of need. This would become like a very tricky thing, and I would almost like, the only thing I feel confident in saying is that like, I think people will feel very certain ways about whatever package that might be, whether it's like he's traded on like a multi-year deal or on the qualifying. I think people will probably feel like a certain way and feel weird about it. Okay, after the break though. We're going to hop in our time machine, and we're going to go to a question about what former non-LeBron Cavs you'd want to add to the roster. This was a very fun thought exercise. We're going to do that right after this. Are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive stoned? What's the worst that could happen? You end up driving below the speed limit? It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is your reaction time slow way down when you're high. You only not put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill, you might say. But stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. All right, back here on Locked On Cavs. Check out Locked On Browns, Locked On Guardians, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show if you want more Cleveland sports fix after you finish making us your #first listen. Evan, this is my favorite question that we got today.
Well, actually, I'm no longer Evan. I'm Jimmy McGill after we got into the time machine. So.
I'm trying to think of what I feel like you got a little. I'm trying to think of what Saul Goodman like persona you are. And I don't feel like it's Jimmy McGill. I kind of feel like you sometimes got a little Saul in you, you know?
Oh, you think I'm a grifter? You think I'm really that big of a
grifter? No,
it's
just like I think it's like Jimmy, like I don't know, maybe you're Gene Takovich. I don't know. I got to think about this. Anyway, from Fragrant Olives on the Discord, what former non-LeBron Cav would you most like to add to today's roster and why? So, I'm going to say I'm going to put one stipulation on this question and I will let you go first because I have some answers in there. Don't steal them, please, because I'm very proud of at least 2 of them. You have to take them from their Cavs runs. So you can't cheat and pick like a guy who was with Cleveland at a certain point but had his apex somewhere else.
Oh, yeah. So like Dwayne Wade, not the answer.
Right. And to be clear, like Kyrie is on the board. Like you could pick Kyrie if you wanted to. You could pick like Sean Kemp if you wanted. You could pick like Andrew Bynum before his knees went bad if you wanted to. I'm saying you can't. But I'm saying like so if you pick you could
also say like yes. Sean Marion. Like Sean Marion at his peak was a freak.
Great example. You can't take 7 seconds or less Suns Sean Marion and put him on this Cavs team. You have to take the Sean Marion that was like a weird fit starting 2 guard for the Cavs that first season with LeBron. So Evan, give me a name. Let's just do this rapid fire. I'm gonna put 45 seconds on the clock, and you're gonna give me your first name.
Sorry, I was just chuckling at like all the odd names that have like Darren Williams came to
mind.
Mike
Like Dunleavy Jr.
Yeah, Mike Dunleavy Jr. But golly, maybe he's a Drunas Ilgauskas prior to the foot injuries. Like that'd be an interesting choice. Maybe even post foot injury Z. Anderson Varejao would be fun.
Oh, I said one rapid fire. Limit yourself. Okay. Tell me Z. Talk about Z. Talk about Z first, and we're gonna rapid
Z
fire
would be
through
good
these.
Because Z before he had his foot injuries was like he was a traditional big man in the sense where he's plotting, but and like heavy footed in that sense too. But like I think he had some interesting upside too. Like he was an all-star caliber player when he was healthy. He did hit that 3-pointer like in the LeBron era, of course, like the first LeBron era. Like he obviously wasn't a shooter, but like Z would have been a fun, interesting pickup, and also like if money wasn't an option, like that's a really high quality backup behind Jared Allen, and like you'd really fortify your bench unit. All right, passing the buck to you.
All right, 45 seconds on the clock. My first pick is Danny Green. Danny Green, second-round pick.
Who didn't make the team.
Give me a redo on developing Danny Green. That's the exact kind of player the Cavs need, a wing who can defend and shoot threes and play really smart team basketball. I want to give me a redo on that kind of player. Now, Cavs they say they're spending more on player development. They say this stuff matters now. I can't guarantee it's going to work out. But give me this. This is just like I want to take another crack at this. This is the kind of more fun thing to me and say, yes, I'm going to put Kyrie on this team. But Danny Green, I'm going to go Danny Green. He's not my like number 1 pick with a bullet in this, but he was like one that I came to when I was making my little list. And I just the ramifications of it are kind of funny to plop a young Danny Green in here and get a chance to redevelop him.
So in a similar vein for me, I have the Google Doc closed, so I don't know who you have picked out right now. So Ron Harper would be really fun then because
he is also on my list. He was the first one I thought of.
So for folks who don't know, the Cavs traded Ron Harper to the Clippers for, was it Danny Ferry? Not Danny Ferry's draft rights. No, it might have been Danny Ferry's draft rights, but either way. And then eventually and Ron Harper showed that he was still worth his salt as a player because like the Cavs thought he was on the on a downward trajectory at that point health-wise, like just wasn't able to work out. But I think he had an torn ACL or something like that. But if you take Ron Harper, who was an absolute bulldog, especially at the point, like he was pivotal to the Michael Jordan championship bowls, just as a point guard in the triangle system. But like if you took a defensive first guard who can who can operate off the ball and provide you like playmaking and shooting at times, like that's ideally what the Cavs kind of need, especially behind Darius Garland, and he was a bit younger when he was at the Cavs. Ron Harper was, so like it'd be a little bit more of a seamless fit in terms of timeline for this team.
6'6", exact size. This team kind of is dying out for in a lot of ways. Like no brainer one. And again, like we're picking upside, we're picking young player stuff. You're picking someone who would fit in today's league and assuming development and all that stuff. Okay, my next one, putting the starting the clock. I'm going to go with Kyle Korver, and I want you to hear me out on this one for a second.
Lay it on me, player.
Number one, this team needs shooting in the worst way possible, okay? Kyle Korver, even like comes to the Cavs for like a top 10 protected lotto pick, was maybe not even worth that. Kyle Korver still provides you that. You have the defensive infrastructure to support him. Mm-hmm. Secondly, getting to talk to Kyle Korver the little bit he was here when I graduated from college, started covering the team in person. Mm-hmm. And getting to watch him talk to guys on the team and seeing what other guys said about him, that's a guy I want in the locker room. I want him, like, obviously helping you, but like, hey, Ochai Agbaji, I'm going to show you some tricks how to get around screens and fire up threes and be like a deadly marksman. I can help Isaac Okoro with his shot form and figuring some of that stuff out. He was willing to do that with the whole roster. He did it with freaking LeBron James. Mm-hmm. That's like the kind of veteran presence I think could be really useful with this team. Just a guy who's going to provide you something. And Kevin, like it's you know, it again, like there's some concerns with it obviously, but like Kyle Korver just like vibes adult guy who's helping you like help your young guys improve while he's still around is just seemed like a fun option to me.
I think that's and not only that, like not only showing Ochai Agbaji the ropes, but he could also show Isaac Okoro and help him improve his shooting mechanics. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you're kind of like working in that same vein, there's a very obvious player to pick from this list. But I'm going to go way back to the beginning. We're going to go with Mr. Cavalier himself, Austin Carr. He was one of the greatest collegiate players of all time, like one of the first like true shooting guards, especially for an era where there wasn't a three-point line. I think if you had the benefit of modern medicine and proper NBA rehabilitation, strength and conditioning, maybe his knee injuries wouldn't be as apparent and bad. And AC would be a pretty fun, like either starting 2 guard or a possible 3 for the Cavs, and like could be a really good option for them on the wing. Plus, like, I don't know, it'd be fun to watch AC give commentary to a time-traveling AC. Like, I would like to hear, I would love to be a fly on the wall for that conversation.
That would be fascinating. Also just gets him better knee surgeons, you know?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, modern medicine and, like, the Cleveland, like, Crystal Clinic did my knee surgery. Like, they would take good care of AC. No
yeah,
props.
The Cavs also have, like, did you say the Crystal Clinic?
Crystal Clinic down in Akron.
Oh, I was going to say there's the Cleveland Clinic the Cavs, that's like literally a corporate sponsor of them. I think that's like the biggest hospital.
But like they're like one of the top orthopedic hospitals in the world. So
all right. I'm gonna give you, Evan, my last couple that we're not gonna dive into. I'm just gonna throw the names out there.
Okay.
Mark Price, just because I think he would fit really well.
Who else I was thinking of as like a shooting coach for Okoro too.
Yeah. Anderson Varejao.
Good pick.
Wesley Pearson.
Interesting pick, but good.
Good, like, big wing who can shoot a little bit, like, just needed skill set. And Richard Jefferson.
I like that. I like RJ. I think he'd be a good locker room guy. Channing Frye in the same vein for me then for that one, because lest us not forget, Channing Frye chose to retire in Cleveland, of all places. He didn't go ring chasing, but just to round up my list, Carlos Boozer would be fun, just because, like, he would be fun for this Cavs team in the modern era. Like, Carlos Boozer would be fun. And, like, the Cavs era Booze Cruise would be fun for the for this era. Bob Suro would be fun, too. I think Delonte West is just, like, a defensive wingier guard would be fun, too. He could defend 1-2s and some 3s at times in the modern NBA. And then, hey, let's just throw Antoine Jameson in there. He can be like an elite. I know Brad Sellers talked about having Carmelo Anthony join the team. Why don't we just go back in time and grab Antoine Jameson and break this Adrian Ilgauskas rule on the way, too?
Did you just pick the most, like, that's like, I think the Jameson pick is the worst vibe pick of any of these picks.
Oh, Hey, at least I didn't pick what's his face? Come back to me. Yeah, but the Jameson pick.
You pick the guy who ultimately lied to who people will remember for lying to a blind man, and Antoine Jameson. I don't think I've ever seen a positive tweet about from a Cavs fan.
I enjoyed it. I mean, I called Antoine garbage time during that rebuilding Cavs era when I was more of a fan of this team because, like, I will never forget he had like a 40-point triple-double in an overtime loss to a rebuilding Milwaukee Bucks team when Ersan Ilyasova just absolutely annihilated the Cavs because behind Jameson was Luke Herringody and Samardo Samuels, which is, fun. It's so fun.
No one else that really came to mind. Like, I mean, Craig Elo, I guess, would be the other one.
Elo would be fun. I think he's kind of like, if you didn't bring Sexton back, Elo definitely has like a really defined role on this Cavs team. If you're able to like time travel with him, but Mo Williams would be good too. Like, I think Mo would be fun.
Yeah, Mo would, like, especially if like you like as like
I was thinking of JJ Hickson, by the way. I blanked on it.
Oh my goodness, that would have been. Notice none of us also picked, like, aside from like Z, like we didn't pick like anyone from like, the finals team. Well, I mean, yeah, that's like another one where it's like I was also just like trying to pick like I did pick like stars because it's like I wanted to pick guys that could fit roles in a lot. Like, Price is a star, but it's like I'm picking guys that fill clear needs on this team more than like, hey, I'm an Ed Kyrie and like him and Darius, like young Kyrie and young Darius together or whatever.
That would be pretty spicy.
The
conversations had in that locker room would be interesting.
All right, after the break, we're going to enter a question about Cavs weaknesses. Stay tuned for more. All right, last segment from Rice with 3 eyes on the Discord. Based purely on speculation, in parentheses, obviously, and assuming reasonable health, what do you think, will emerge as the Cavs' biggest weakness this season? Will it still be consistent point guard play, defensive versatility, etc.? Evan, what do you think will kind of bear out as the Cavs' biggest weakness or weaknesses this upcoming season?
It is an interesting question because obviously, punch the mic. It's been a while. Health has been a factor for this Cavs team last season. It probably will be a factor for this Cavs team this upcoming season as well. Like, I mean, there's going to be concerns and trepidations with Darius Garland and putting too much on him. So I think consistent point guard availability is what I'm going to go with instead of play, because I think you're going to get consistent play from Garland. Maybe you see a slight regression, especially if Sexton comes back and LeVert kind of has a more fleshed out role in this offense, but like more efficient numbers in the same regard for Garland. It's fair to wonder, like, is Halu Neto going to be enough to bridge the gap between when Rubio is available and isn't, and when Rubio's back and has all the rust kind of shaken off? Is he going to be the same player after tearing the same ACL twice? I'll keep stewing on this because it's a really good question, but I'm gonna bounce it to you. I'm gonna bounce the pass, if you will, pass the rock. And what do you think is going to be one of their like biggest weaknesses?
So the couple I came up with was, I would say, spacing and overall shooting. The offense obviously just got cramped at times last year. They don't have a lot of plus shooters. That to me stands out as a thing that just like hasn't really changed. Abaji certainly could help with that, but it's like that's a lot to ask of a rookie. Sexton would help too, but we'll see again how that situation turns out. I think wing defense is another one. It's just still a weak group on the roster to me. That is just a real pressure point on the roster without someone other than really Mobley to kind of throw at some of these bigger apex wings. Like, this team doesn't even have like a Royce O'Neal type that could kind of make some sense in the roster and allow those other guys to do other things. Like, you're really kind of relying on what worked last year. Okoro can do some of that stuff and whatever, but like they don't have that guy that can at least physically battle some of these bigger apex swings that you might see. And the last one, Evan, for me, is turnovers. Garland turned the ball over a lot last year, which happens obviously in very high usage. That's not necessarily indicative of him being poor with the ball in his hands. He certainly could do better with that, but he also just had the ball a lot, so he's going to have turnovers. But the Cavs are also 27th in turnover percentage as a team last year. I think, like, especially for a team that doesn't have like the most inventive offense, doesn't have like, I think, like the highest offensive ceiling, is really going to be based on its defense. I think like that has to get better, probably via a mix of performance and scheme choices that aim at limiting turnovers and make for easier decisions. But I think those to me are the three. I think spacing and shooting, just kind of the offense getting a little more loose, a little more fluid. I think perimeter wing defense remains a concern, and that gets erased a little bit. So maybe you can talk yourself out of that one being the biggest issue, and turnovers. And I would say really, I skew towards the offensive ones being the biggest concerns about this Cavs team.
I agree with you. You hit the head on the nail with just this Cavs team being very vanilla offensively and just being a below average team in terms of 3-point shooting as well. So that's just tricky in its own regard. I think perimeter shooting is going to be a weakness for this Cavs team, like you said. Like Ochai Agbaji will improve things. You would assume Larry Markin in a more comfortable, fleshed out role will be better at it. I'd assume Darius Garland will be able to produce the same numbers, especially on such a high volume. Like as for individual shot creation, like that'll be helpful. Like maybe Evan Mobley takes the lead. Maybe Kevin Love helps with that a lot as well. Other than that, really just like my biggest concern with this team is just maybe the pressure of expectations. I know. And that could be like their biggest weakness, where it's not the beginning of the season where this Cavs team was young, fun, and full of energy and just catching the majority of their opponents off guard, with some teams just studying the film and taking them seriously some nights early in the season. Then you watched it kind of decline. Injuries were a factor of that, but also teams just kind of having experience playing this Cavs team and kind of figuring out some of the holes and just how they try to operate offensively. You have to wonder now that we're starting on with a clean slate here, but also, as Brad Sellers pointed out on the show the other day, like they are no longer the predators, they are part of the prey now. Like teams are going to be hunting them, teams are going to know what to expect, and the Eastern Conference is so tight this year that it could be somewhat tough for them to live up to the expectations, because I know publicly they're not going to say, hey, we don't expect playoffs or bust, but like I'm sure privately there's some guys in that locker room thinking like we got to get to the playoffs this year. We were so close last year. And then like there's going to be the fan aspect of it as well, where like you can tune out the noise for so long, but eventually you're going to hear people screaming, or I bet, hey, like today the Cavs had the 10th best odds to win the Eastern Conference according to BetOnline, and that number could kind of throw some Cavs fans through a loop, because some people think like, oh, they're a top 3 team in the East, when you can make a pretty good argument there's 5 or 6 teams that are better than them right now.
So two things I'm going to throw at you before we get out of here.
Okay.
So last year the Cavs, according to Clean the Glass, were 13th in point differential. This was with them having the 6th best defense in the league. They were 19th in offense, below average offense by about half a point per 100 possession. So I ask you this because let's just say like they're healthier this year. Let's just assume at least some better health, because I think that was a part of last year. I kind of wonder how good the offense really can get. I don't think this is the team that has a top 10 offense in it.
Oh, no.
But can they get to like a little above league average? Can they get to like, I mean, the Warriors had the 17th best offense in the regular season and won a title, and the 2nd best defense. Yeah. So like you can have like a model where your defense is better than your offense and win a title.
But the Warriors also have one Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and so on.
And James Beck. I'm not saying they're apples to apples. I'm saying like there are good teams that have this like similar kind of structure.
I think it is possible for the Cavs to be like slightly below average offensively this year. I don't think they're
like get up to like 14, so like in the top 15, but like just a tad, that's like a tad. That was like a point and a half above league average. Could you get to like, let's just say the league average next year is like 112.5, so it's up like a little bit. So could you get to like 113 and get to like 15th, 16th in the league and up out of 19th? Like, is that like a mod or could they get a full point better and get up to like close to or 2 points better, get up to like 114, so up near like Philly and like I don't know how good this offense really could be, and like there's things I think they could control better, and I'm like struggling thinking about this team. It's like I don't really have an idea. Like I feel like the defense largely, Evan, is like going to probably still be really freaking good. The offense, yes. I'm just kind of like I don't know what the upside is, and that like that's maybe the way to answer this. Is that's probably my biggest concern, is that like I don't know how good this offense really will be.
I think if you're a regular listener, you're about to groan with my answer, but we probably have to put a pin in that. Wait 15-ish games or so, and we'll have like a clear barometer of how the Cavs are functioning offensively to that point in the season. maybe what works, what doesn't work. I talked with Locked On Fantasy Basketball about this the other day. Like, teams now know the Cavs like to go big. This just isn't a fluke, but will they have to do more creative things offensively? Like, will they have to play some small ball with like either Jared Allen or Evan Mobley being the lone big on the floor? Or do they really fully lean into this whole big ball situation that they like to play too? Like, it's hard to imagine they make a dramatic leap, but they are a top 10 offensive team. I agree with that, but
yeah. So like end of the year, Evan, here's their aside from that end of season Milwaukee game that was just like just like everyone showed up and got their paycheck. And obviously there's some injuries here as well. I understand the context, blah blah blah. 110 offensive rating against Philly on April 3rd, 115.3 against Orlando on April 5th, 115.4 on April 8th against Brooklyn. Then in the first playing game, it was 112.5 against Brooklyn, and then 107.4 against Atlanta.
This is, I don't know. That's tricky because those playing games are obviously a playoff atmosphere, and the games are a lot tighter. I think that you could tell the Cavs were playing nervous in that first one against Brooklyn, but they were technically better offensively against Brooklyn than they were against Atlanta. The Philly example is interesting. I wasn't surprised. The highest number you listed was against Orlando. That's probably the worst team of the bunch you listed there.
The best offensive game they had all season was April 2nd when they scored 119 points in New York and had an offensive rating of 135.2.
That's surprising to me, especially with how hard they were beating teams at the beginning of the season too. But
all their best offensive games were really like December or later. Like they went against the Nuggets, for example. Like their offense was actually was pretty bad. Their defense was just like absolutely insane.
Their defense was it was like that game, and then the game when they won in Los Angeles against the Clippers. Like the defense was just absolutely bonkers in that one because it was just literally two teams bludgeoning each other to death, but the Cavs would have grind the Clippers a little harder than that one.
Yeah, Cavs had a defensive rating in that game of 83.3, which is like clamps. You remember when they beat the Pistons by 20 in November?
Yes.
And they won 98-78. They had an offensive rating in that game of 97.7, which is like horrid. That's horrid, right? Their defensive rating was 77.
That's some early 2000s basketball right
That's just ugly and not good and all of that. So I don't know. I think I'm very curious to see what the offense looks like. Like there's Evan Mobley. Like there's also just so many unknowns. Like what happens with Sexton? What does Rubio look like when he comes back? What is Evan Mobley's year two? Like, does Okoro figure it out as a shooter? Does Abaji contribute meaningfully in the right way? Like, there's all these questions that we don't know the answer to right now. And I'm curious to see, like, if there's, like, different sets. And, like, there's so many little questions. Do they try to layer more stuff in this year and kind of evolve the offense? Like, how much, like, can they depend on Kevin Love, like, kind of coming through clutch in a lot of ways for them than he did last year? Like, can you get that same kind of production again? Like that's an open question. So I
don't think so.
I think you can get some of it, but is it like he felt so important last year where it's like, can some of the responsibility Kevin Love held get shifted onto like Karis LeVert or Colin Sexton or Evan? I think Evan Mobley is kind of the answer to a lot of these questions. So I don't know. To answer Rice's question in actual and give a final firm answer from me, Evan, it's like, is this offense good? Because I don't know.
That's my answer too, is just what is this team's offensive identity? Like I think defensively they are going to be really good just because they have such a solid back line with Mobley and Allen, and then Okoro does a lot of fun things, and they do have some specialists on their roster that can make it interesting as well. But I don't know, man. It's going to be tricky for sure. But the only reason I shook my head is because, do you agree with me where I think Kevin Love is like primed for the biggest regression on this Cavs roster? Because I give a lot of credit to his strong start to the season to having Ricky Rubio come off the bench with him.
I think no, because I think he persisted throughout the year in a way that, like, I think his whole body of work was really impressive. I think the question is, like, does his injury luck remain good?
Hope so.
I don't think there's actually like a prime. Kevin Love might be the best bet for like a regression thing. We did that whole episode. Or I did an episode with Justin Rowan about it where we talked about it. Hello, Justin, if you've made it, if you listen, you're listening this far. But I don't know if there's like someone on this Cavs team that I like look at and I'm like, okay, like does this like like Darius Garland, even though like his season last year was like ridiculous, like doesn't necessarily mean he's gonna regress in like a crazy way. I don't know. Like Evan Mobley doesn't feel like a regression piece. Like I don't know.
Mobley to me feels like the biggest, him or Okoro, depending on what you get offensively from Okoro, could be like two of the biggest breakout candidates. Garland could regress offensively just because you brought in Neto, you brought back Rubio, you are hoping for more Karis LeVert, you're hoping to bring back Colin Sexton. Like you have enough support around Garland at the guard position to kind of alleviate the need for Garland to play at a nuclear level at game 37 and then keep playing at that level until game 84 when his back is just ready to give out. So I think you're looking at the long run and realize it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm sure some folks would be like, oh, he wasn't worth the max contract if he doesn't put up like the exact numbers or ascend past another level. But I think we're going to see more efficient play from Garland and probably higher assist numbers, if anything. Like I think that's where we'll see like the leap from him next year is like better efficiency, less turnovers, and just more creation opportunities for his teammates.
We'll see where this goes. This is going to be a ton of fun. This is going to be a ton of fun to get into the season. This conversation ever has made me more excited for actual basketball that we can break down instead of just like pondering a bunch of these questions that we could have to be like, well, we need to see some games first. But thanks for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. This episode was produced by Jake Stevens. We'll be back on Wednesday looking ahead to the season in some way, shape, or form. We're recording this one a little early, so we don't exactly know what we're going to cover on that Wednesday episode, but please come back. We guarantee we'll have something that'll get you smarter and ready for the 2022-23 Cavs. For your second listen, get up to date on the latest news and rumors in the NBA in just 30 minutes. Every day with Locked On NBA. Locked On NBA is your daily NBA update in just 30 minutes. Check out our back catalog as well. Check out Locked On Guardians, Locked On Browns, the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and all of that great stuff. Until next time, I'm Chris. That's Evan, everyone. Be well.